Thanks for listening to The Granite List Live. Today's episode is brought to you by Connect Healthcare Collaboration, where benefits marketing meets clinical advocacy to drive effective employee engagement. This is The Granite List Live, where we explore all things human capital and employee benefits related. I'm your host, Sally Pace, and today I am joined by Adam DeVito and Maggie Biscarr of Monj Health. And we're going to talk about what led to the genesis of Monj and some of the ways that you are impacting employer-sponsored health plans. But before we do that, I'd love for the two of you to give a little bit of your background and what drew you to this space. So Adam, I'll let you go first.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's great to be here with you, Sally. Great to be with you, Maggie. Thanks so much for making it happen. I will take a moment to give a story a little bit about my background because in many ways it kind of culminates with Monj. A brief tour. I started when I was a kid in top French kitchens in the US and in France and owned restaurants, opened 2 schools for professional chefs. I was really drawn at a young age by the artistry and the incredibly hard work and choreographed dance of working in top kitchens and then later teaching. And that kind of serendipitously led me out of the kitchen to co-author and launch a series of 11 books on healthy cooking that became pretty widely distributed and permanently kind of shifted my focus from a culinary life to really the role that food plays in health and well-being. And then, by chance, I parlayed that into going into the belly of the beast as the first executive chef of the world's largest food company at the time and head of new concept development. And I helped to evolve their portfolio to be healthier and more relevant. With that, I would say we failed because multinational companies did not get the memo. We worked very hard. But along the way, I developed hundreds of new products. I developed 2 multi-billion-dollar brands while we were there. And it was an incredible run. That took me to spend a decade in Boulder as managing partner of Sterling Rice Group, which is a strategy and innovation firm. I led the health and wellness practice there, and I got a chance to work with virtually all of the large natural foods and organic foods companies, as well as a lot of the really big guys as well. So really, over the last several decades, I have been working as a strategist, as an entrepreneur, and more over the last 5 years as a CEO coach to purpose-driven leaders, which is incredibly my passion and kind of at the intersection of leadership, of change, which is happening quickly on the planet. And certainly we're going to be talking about rapid changes related to GLP-1s, human health, which is right at the center of it, and innovation. And Monj is in many ways kind of the culmination or the coming together of everything I've done over my career, which we'll get into.
Perfect. Maggie, you're from my neck of the woods originally, but have had a wonderful career.
I was born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee, yes. But I've been here in Washington, D.C. for over half my life. So I'm a Washingtonian, so they say. I'm a mom, a community builder, and a passionate foodie and a chef in my own kitchen in my personal life. And in fact, interestingly, the path not taken, I guess, was if I didn't go to social work school, I was planning to go to culinary school. So I didn't, but at least I get to associate with people like Adam, which is the next best thing.
I get to play one on TV.
That's right. I get to play one on TV. So professionally, though, I've spent most of my career really focused on trying to answer the question around how to use food as a tool to improve health outcomes while at the same time creating value for the organizations that serve people every day, like retailers, employers, and others. So to me, that shared value proposition drives all of the work that I do. So again, I'm a social worker by education, which is maybe a little bit interesting for where I ended up. But I started my career really focused on addressing social drivers of health and spent most of that time focused on food insecurity and access to nutrition. And kind of in the early days of food as medicine, I was fortunate to be able to develop some really cool multi-sector programs at AARP Foundation. So I've had the privilege of leading partnership and innovation initiatives at AARP Foundation, where I led food security and food as medicine. And then later at PepsiCo, which is, kind of similar to Adam, the opportunity to work in one of the largest nonprofits and then one of the largest food companies in the world has really been an amazing opportunity. And being at PepsiCo and working, I did a lot of work with retailers, a lot of testing and learning with retailers about how to nudge consumers towards healthier behaviors, choices, and behaviors. And that's really, I think, where I gained such a great understanding of the power of behavioral science and how to nudge consumers and how you can really use that power for good. So throughout my career, I've been a builder of cross-sector collaborations. I'm always looking to connect the people and systems that maybe don't always connect, and really focus on bringing together employers, healthcare, retailers, food companies, nonprofits, and government partners, kind of all those stakeholders that takes to bring together to improve health outcomes for people through food and other, lifestyle interventions. And so today, I'm an independent consultant. I advise several organizations working in the food as medicine or food for health space, focused on workforce well-being, healthcare innovation, including Monj. And I serve on the board of an organization called HERO, which is the Health Enhancement Research Organization, where we're really helping to advance the evidence base for healthier workplace and communities.
Well, it's so interesting because I'm sure I'm not alone. Our listeners, as they hear about PepsiCo and you talk about the drive for healthy and wise food choices, that isn't really what people think of. And, I am so excited about this episode because Adam, although my father doesn't have the accolades that you have, in college, his first job was in a French pastry shop. And so at age 8, my first cookbook collection was Julia Child's volumes 1 and 2. And so we grew up with this fascination of really good quality food. And I have the privilege of being married to somebody who used to preach, let food be thy medicine. And yet in our country, there is this epidemic of the struggle of our relationship with food. And so I'm curious, for both of you, you've been working at this intersection of food and health for some time. And certainly through the work that Monj does, it is the cornerstone of it. But I'm curious, how have GLP-1s, which are, that is getting the headline every day, all day, how has that played a role in accelerating? And is that a weird question? Is it accelerating the food as medicine movement?
Yeah, I don't think it's a weird question. I think, again, I've been in this space since the term food as medicine started really cropping up, and did some really early work with insurance companies, retailers, and USDA to kind of test and learn in the space. And I would say that it's been most of my career, it's felt like pushing boulders up a hill. And since GLP-1s hit the scene, I think they're one of the biggest catalysts that the food as medicine, food for health movement has seen in years. And so we've known for decades that nutrition plays a big role in preventing and managing chronic disease. And there's lots of evidence around interventions like produce prescriptions, medically tailored meals, and nutrition incentives. But even still, adoption at any type of scale has been pretty slow relative to other things. And so what GLP-1s have done is to really highlight the importance of metabolic health. Like, people are talking about metabolic health, and you've never heard that term in the early days of this. So employers, health plans, providers, retailers, and, people, consumers are all paying attention because the stakes are high for everyone. These GLP-1s are super effective, really a miracle for so many people, but they're also really expensive, and they're not a complete solution on their own. And so while they help people lose weight, they don't do things like teach people healthy eating patterns, cooking skills, grocery shopping habits, or other behaviors that really are key for sustaining long-term health outcomes. So we're seeing a shift in the conversation now. And I would say this started, 3-4 years ago, where I really started to hear organizations asking, like, how do we do this? How do we pair medication with nutrition and behavior change to really ensure sustainable outcomes? And for consumers, that's critical for their health. And then for others, it's critical for the bottom line. So I think, that's where food as medicine really comes in. You see that GLP-1s are accelerating demand for nutrition support, culinary therapy, medically tailored meals, and other programs that help people really maximize the benefits of the drug. And so GLP-1s didn't create the food as medicine movement, but they've dramatically accelerated its visibility and its relevance. And I think, again, have helped move the conversation from wellness and just, being healthy to really a healthcare and business bottom line conversation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I might add, I think Maggie is exactly right in everything she shared. We're a culture that is always in search of taking a pill. Oh my gosh, could I take a pill?
Absolutely.
And suddenly the pill comes, and the pill ends up actually revealing the fundamental underlying challenge, which is how we eat. So in fact, if you eat more processed foods and low prebiotic fiber, et cetera, you actually will feel nauseous and lower likelihood that you stick with the GLP-1s. If you don't have a healthy diet, you won't sustain the weight loss. So there's a lot of challenges around this. So in a way, the medication itself has inadvertently shined a light on food and our food life. And increasingly now with employers, as we'll also get into, they're saying, hey, this is not a complete solution, the pill itself. So, GLP-1s, I think they help people eat less, but they don't necessarily teach people how to eat well over time. And obviously, there's no behavior in the medication itself. The other thing I would add is the medication kind of quiets the noise around food for the first time in years for people, especially that have a lot of cravings. And I understand, and Maggie does as well, how the multinationals have created foods that are really craveable. We understand all the hacks and tricks. And it's a real challenge for humans out there to kind of combat some of the tools that the food scientists have at their disposal. So really the question comes for the person when the noise quiets down about wanting different foods, now what? And so in that little gap, potentially there's an opportunity for a shift in behaviors. And the medication kind of creates the opening. And then the question is, how do I maintain my health and vitality when the medication changes or goes away? And that's where we're really leaning in with Monj, which I'll share more. But, food as medicine doesn't have to be prescriptive. It does not have to be boring. And a lot of it has been more prescriptive and boring. It can be fun, deeply engaging. And that's what we're after. And of course, that's what will make the behaviors actually stick.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Maggie, I'm going to come back to you and ask, what are some of the key trends that you're seeing right now as it relates to GLP-1s and food? And where do you see Monj fitting into all of this?
Great question. So there are several trends that stand out. I mentioned, we're seeing this shift from a weight loss conversation to a metabolic health conversation. And payers and consumers are starting to recognize, and I'm seeing in some employee surveys that long-term success requires more than medication. So employers and other payers are looking for ways to improve nutrition for their constituents. And then people are looking to preserve muscle mass and maintain their energy and skin elasticity and all these things, right? And sustain their results over time because, Adam's right about the shift. And it's great when the food noise quiets down, but then if you don't eat enough or don't know what to eat, that's where things happen like the Ozempic face and that kind of thing. People don't want that. People are terrified of that. So then there's also a growing demand for integrated solutions. So in the employer space, they're being barraged, right? They don't want just another point solution. They want connected models that bring together treatment, nutrition, behavior change, and ongoing engagement for their employees. They don't want to pay for things that their employees are not going to use. And then retailers and food companies and healthcare organizations are becoming more involved. That's another trend. So, these stakeholders are recognizing that food choices are really a critical part of the solution and that supporting those choices and healthier habits can have a real meaningful impact on outcomes and costs over time. And then I think most importantly, we see that there's a recognition that behavior change is the missing link. Touched on that a couple times, but we have the medications, we have food interventions, we have digital tools, but really helping people translate good intentions into daily life, daily action, like closing that intention gap is where I think Monj has really nailed it and where they're, really uniquely positioned to help people. Because when I first saw Monj, one of the things that impressed me the most, and have a little bit of a background in behavioral psychology from my school days, but the ability that it has to make behavior change engaging, practical, and sustainable for people, that's really what makes Monj stand out. It combines, culinary therapy, coaching, community, education, and behavioral science in a way that really helps people build real food skills, real skills around food, and empowers people. Instead of telling people what to eat and being restrictive, it really helps people understand how to shop and cook and prepare meals and make healthier choices in a way that feels very natural, and it makes healthy living achievable and enjoyable instead of restrictive and a chore. And so, I mean, I think as GLP-1s continue to, the adoption of them continues to grow, I see Monj as a really important behavioral companion, really helping to improve the things that are critical: adherence, sustainable results, and healthcare outcomes over the long term.
Maggie, as I hear you talk, I don't know why the word diet kept popping into my head, reminiscent of the 80s and 90s diet, where it was that restricted, caloric.
Oh, yeah. I did every single one of them. So
Yes. But then to today, where this conversation is changing, diet is your daily intake of food. How are you sustaining and nourishing yourself? And so, Adam, you shared your very illustrious career leading up to this point, and you dove, feet first, head first. And so I'm curious, what did inspire the creation of Monj, and how are you serving as that companion for this crazy, fast evolving world of GLP-1s?
Yeah, that's a great question. And by the way, we do have to come back to Julia for another episode because we can tell Julia's stories. She was a good friend.
Yes, we will.
So, yeah, I think it starts with that whole idea that people don't diet or have a relationship with food that is something that they want to call long-term a diet, but they have an intimate relationship with food, regardless if it's a relationship that serves them well or does not serve them well over time. I'd say the genesis even goes back to doing early what's called ethnographic research in people's homes when I was working with large companies like Mead Johnson and Nestle, and they were very interested in metabolic disease and lifestyle disease, and even at Time Life, where I went into people's homes and I worked and saw firsthand people that were really struggling mightily with weight and weight-related illness and stuff. And I don't know, I was moved. And it was early on that I thought, okay, what can we do here? Because I was at that intersection of the big food companies, having grown up in top kitchens, having created a series of books on healthy food. So I kind of got deep into behavioral models and started looking at self-determination theory, which is the science of intrinsic motivation. And I thought, okay, ding, 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 that's the opportunity to apply a science that really promotes autonomy, curiosity, interest, competence, skill building, and then also connection to others, because food really is a deep relationship. It impacts your social well-being, your psychological well-being, your emotional well-being. And so that became the genesis of Monj. Our approach is really grounded in that food really is medicine, and metabolic health really does start with gut health, but it doesn't have to be prescriptive. It can actually be fun. So our platform itself builds sustainable habits. We're restoring what's missing in more clinically focused programs, which is really joy, abundance, bold flavors, social connection around food and daily living. In fact, we do something called cook-alongs with our Food Network Chop champion, who happens to be our culinary director, Eliza Martin. She's incredible. And you're cooking alongside Eliza on a Tuesday night, making the most amazing food, and she's giving you all these incredible hacks and tricks along the way. So the platform guides you. It's technology enabled to put your hands on whole foods, do great stuff. Then we've got live events, and we've also layered on behavioral coaching as well. So, I think that the question really then is, how does GLP-1s fit in? And as GLP-1s became much more ubiquitous, we've worked to become a natural kind of companion to GLP-1s to help participants kind of create a truly happy and healthy long-term relationship with food before they go on to GLP-1s, during the GLP-1 phase, and after. And that's how you navigate the medication. So, in fact, we have a dedicated partner that we've signed on with called Precision Telemed. That's a world-class company in delivering the highest quality medications. So we have a whole wraparound program. We also work with other GLP-1 providers. And at a functional level, our whole goal is to put you in the driver's seat. And I think that's the key. Prebiotic fiber is critical, lean proteins, an abundance of them, variable portion sizes, healthy fats. Everything there is ideal for GLP-1s. And during your rapid weight loss phase with the medication, we really have designed the program to create greater adherence to achieve your initial weight loss goals. And also then with the total focus on achieving better long-term health outcomes by keeping you in the program, empowering employees. And lastly, I guess I would say lowering the cost of care for the employer themselves, which is absolutely critical.
So Adam, you touched on employers and lowering costs. And that is certainly, I would say, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, that cost of care is one of the most horrible pain points for employers in the US right now. But I'm curious, what are the most common pain points that you're seeing both employers and employees face that your solution helps resolve? And then what are those outcomes that employers should expect to see?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, the common question that employees are wondering or asking is, how can I sustain this? Because it is hard to sustain with the pill coming and the injection, as an option, but the pill as an option, it will probably be easier to sustain. But how can I sustain this? Because it isn't always fun. Employers are kind of wondering, will the results stick? And in some ways, those are the same question, right? So overall, one of the biggest kind of misconceptions is we think the challenge is weight loss, okay? And I think we're all now on the same page that GLP-1s are quite effective at helping many people, not everyone, but many people lose weight. But the bigger challenge for everyone is what comes next. So how do I get enough protein? How do I build back muscle and bone density, as Maggie was touching on? What do I eat when I'm not hungry? I mean, if I'm not hungry, what do I do? Because it's such an odd feeling. Will I lose a connection to my family? Those are some of the big things that we're seeing. And perhaps most importantly, what happens, if and when I stop taking the medication. So, employers are saying today, look, we're making a significant investment in metabolic health, but they're increasingly popping up saying, look, we need to know that we're on a path to create lasting change. We can't simply fund a prescription that so many employees want. So that is where we come in. And, I think the outcomes that employers should expect are not just pounds lost, but employees with greater confidence, okay, with healthier habits long-term and lower risk of weight regain. I mean, that's got to be the key metric. Ultimately, employees and teams that are better equipped to sustain positive health outcomes over time. And so that's our focus. And we see a rapidly evolving landscape there.
For employees, I would echo that one of the biggest pain points I hear about is that people are overwhelmed. They're taking a new drug. They're getting messages from everywhere, doctors, social media, their friends, health plans, wellness programs, but they're still walking into their kitchen at night and thinking, what do I do? What do I cook? What do I eat? How do I feed my family? And that's most people, right? Most busy working people. But for people taking GLP-1s, to Adam's point, their appetite's reduced and that food noise is gone. So there's a real uncertainty. You open your fridge and you're just looking at it like it's so different than when the GLP-1 kind of takes away those cravings. And then there are the concerns about getting enough protein and fiber and maintaining all of those habits. And so I think Monj, obviously helps bridge that and helps provide the everyday practical cooking skills and brings the joy back into cooking. And so I think I see it too. Adam was talking about sustaining the results, but I think Monj is helpful as a precursor to going on GLP-1s, as a companion program during, and then as an off-ramp or sustainable model for healthy eating and joyful eating afterwards to help maintain results. But each of those phases are really different for people on GLP-1s, and they have different needs. And there's a lot of great insights and evidence out there related to GLP-1 shoppers and how they shop and how they eat. And I find it really interesting how the trends change over time. And so at every stage of that, there's a role for Monj, because, it's, again, when we're trying to learn something new or do something new, it's not like you learn it day one and you're done. It's an ongoing companion. And there's a skill building element to Monj, which is really cool. Like, you learn knife skills, you can learn saute skills, you can learn baking skills. There's all these skills. And those are things that build over time and really, again, empower people over the long term. And so for employers, the challenge is different because there is a real understanding. There's some evidence out there that employers now more than ever before are very aware that nutrition is important and that it impacts workforce health and productivity and healthcare costs. but there's still a reluctance to take action because there's so many solutions out there. So partnerships like this, partnership between Monj and Precision Telemed, it's a great example of offering a complete bundled solution. And so I think, again, Monj is out there to help address challenges for employees, for employers. And I think over time, employers should expect to see, using a tool like Monj, stronger employee engagement and improved performance, but also can expect to use it as a retention tool. I think employers who invest in health and wellness and in skill building around food are going to see that results in stronger retention and is a differentiator for them. So, I think I have so many other good things to say about Monj, but I know we're kind of coming to the end here.
Well, as Adam has already put it out there, that we can have a part 2 and explore a number of other topics as well. Well, as I shared with both of you, this is the education of people around food in conjunction with or in place of medicine is something that is so near and dear to my heart. And so this was a special show for me today. I really appreciate the two of you coming on, sharing your knowledge. And I know that our audience will take away wonderful nuggets. The most important being that this is a wonderful solution for employers that is not the mainstream, just the prescription. And so thank you both. Thank you very much to Monj for being part of the Granite List community. Obviously, our listeners can go to thegranitelist.com to learn more, as well as to monj.com to learn more. And I thank you for being on the show, and thank you to our audience for tuning into another episode of The Granite List Live.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Granite List Live. Access our entire library by visiting your favorite podcast venue or subscribe on our site, thegranitelist.live.